It's 3:45 in the afternoon. A mother kneels on a parking lot pavement, voice shaking, trying to reason with a 7-year-old who has already stopped listening. Around her, other parents scroll their phones, exhausted. A father sighs and gives in again. A grandmother bribes with screen time just to get through the next 10 minutes. This scene plays out every single day, in thousands of cities across the Western world. Now, same time of day, different country. No negotiations. No meltdowns. No exhausted parent on their knees. Just calm. The difference isn't genetics. It isn't strictness. And it has almost nothing to do with discipline in the way the West understands it. By the end of this video, you will have a 2-word answer and 3 specific practices you can begin using this week that explain exactly how Japan produces emotionally stable children, almost by default. Here is something that should stop you in your tracks. According to the American Psychological Association, anxiety is now the most common mental health condition among children in the United States. 1 in 3 adolescents will meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder before they reach adulthood. In the UK, the numbers tell the same story. In Australia, in Canada, the West is facing a childhood mental health crisis, and it is accelerating. But here is what the headlines never ask. Why aren't Japanese children in this statistic? Japan has its own pressures, academic competition, rigid social structures, long school hours. By Western logic, Japanese children should be more anxious. The conditions are harder, not easier. And yet, study after study shows Japanese children demonstrate significantly higher levels of emotional regulation, frustration tolerance, and behavioral calm than their Western counterparts. The answer isn't found in a parenting book written last year. It's embedded in a philosophy that has shaped Japanese family life for centuries, and it operates almost invisibly. Parents don't sit down and teach it. Children don't study it. It simply runs in the background, like an operating system. The 2 words are this: Amae and Gambatte. These are not simply words. They are architectural principles for how a child's emotional world is built. Amae, loosely translated, means to depend on another's benevolence. It describes the emotional permission a Japanese child is given to feel safe relying on a parent, not as weakness but as a foundation. In Western parenting, there is a hidden anxiety underneath the love. Parents secretly fear that too much comfort will create dependency. Too much reassurance will make children soft. So they push children toward independence, often before the emotional infrastructure is ready. Japanese parenting philosophy operates from the opposite assumption. A child who feels completely emotionally safe at home does not need to act out to test the boundaries of that safety. The stability is assumed, and because it is assumed, the child can relax into it. Then there is Gambatte. You have likely heard this word. It is used at the beginning of challenges, during difficulty, at moments of failure. It is usually translated as do your best. But that translation loses something essential. Gambatte does not say, you can do it. It does not say, you're so smart. It says, persist through this. The effort, not the result, is what is being honored. Harvard developmental psychologist Carol Dweck spent decades proving what Japanese culture already knew. Children praise for effort develop resilience. Children praise for outcome develop fragility. Japan builds this into the language children hear before they are old enough to read. Philosophy without practice is just decoration. So let's get specific. Here are the 3 practices embedded in Japanese family culture that directly produce emotional stability in children, and that any parent can begin implementing this week. In most Western homes, the morning is a battleground. You are fighting the clock, fighting resistance, fighting your own exhaustion. The first emotional experience of your child's day is chaos. Japanese family culture treats the morning as a ritual, not a race. Children as young as 3 are given small, consistent responsibilities, laying out their clothes the night before, placing their bag by the door, helping set the breakfast table. These are not chores in the Western punitive sense. They are identity assignments. What the child is learning is not how to fold clothes. What they are learning is, I am someone who contributes. I am someone who is trusted. I am capable. This single shift, from reactive morning to ritual morning, has been shown in studies from Osaka University to reduce cortisol levels in children by the time they arrive at school. Lower cortisol, less anxiety, better learning. better behavior. And it costs nothing. It only requires starting 10 minutes earlier. When a Japanese child is upset, the instinctive parental response is not to remove the source of upset. It is to name it. You feel frustrated because you wanted that and you couldn't have it. That feeling is real. I see it. Full stop. No solution. No distraction. No negotiation. No, but look over here. In the West, we have been conditioned to treat our children's negative emotions as emergencies we must immediately resolve. Every tear becomes a problem to be solved. Every frustration becomes something to be eliminated. The result? Children who have never learned that they can survive a feeling. Japanese parenting trusts the child to move through discomfort. The parent's job is to witness, not rescue. And in that witnessing, the child learns the most important emotional lesson of their life. I am not destroyed by this feeling. I can feel it and come out the other side. This is the neurological foundation of emotional regulation. And it cannot be downloaded. It can only be experienced repeatedly safely over time. Does any of this remind you of your own childhood? Or the way you parent right now? Take a moment with that. We'll continue in just a second. In Japan, there is a concept called ma, the power of pause, of space, of intentional quiet. Western family life is increasingly terrified of silence. Silence gets filled with screens, with noise, with stimulation, with scheduled activities. Children are rarely allowed to simply be without being entertained. Japanese families, particularly in the evening, practice what might be called companionable silence. Everyone present. No one performing. The parent is not lecturing. The child is not being directed. They are simply together. Quietly. Neuroscience now confirms what Japanese families have practiced intuitively for generations. A child's nervous system requires regular periods of low stimulation togetherness to fully process the emotional events of the day. Without it, the emotional backlog builds and builds until it finds the nearest exit, which is usually a meltdown, a tantrum, or an anxious child who cannot sleep. Ma is the exhale that the Western family schedule never allows. Here is the part of this conversation that requires honesty. None of what we have discussed is complicated. None of it requires money, expertise, or a perfect home environment. So why don't Western parents do it? Because the unhurried morning requires us to slow down. And we are addicted to urgency. Because emotional naming without rescuing requires us to tolerate our child's discomfort. And we have never been taught to tolerate our own. Because shared silence requires us to put down the phone. And that screen is often the only place we feel in control. The anxiety epidemic in Western children is not a children's problem. It is a nervous system problem. Passed quietly from a dysregulated parent to a child who has no framework for what calm actually feels like. Japanese parenting does not produce calm children by controlling them more. It produces calm children by modeling calm, by building environments where calm is the default, not the reward for good behavior. The child doesn't learn emotional stability from a lesson. They absorb it the way they absorb language, through exposure, through repetition, through the invisible curriculum of daily life. You do not need to move to Japan. You do not need to overhaul your entire family system by next Tuesday. You need 3 things. And you already have all of them. You need 10 extra minutes in the morning to make the routine a ritual. You need the willingness to witness your child's emotions instead of racing to erase them. And you need the courage to sit in the quiet together and trust that nothing needs to be fixed right now. Amae, the safety of unconditional emotional presence. Gambatte, the honor of effort over outcome. Ma, the healing power of shared, intentional stillness. These are not exotic concepts from a distant culture. They are the things your child's nervous system has been asking for, in every meltdown, every tantrum, every anxious bedtime, since the very beginning. The Japanese did not discover something new. They simply never forgot something ancient. And now neither will you. If this gave you something to think about, something you want to carry into your home this week, share it with another parent who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more on how the world's greatest cultures raise intelligent, emotionally strong, deeply rooted children. We'll see you in the next one.